Alright, so I wanted to take a second and talk about the garment clear on an appendix inside the waistband draw. Before I begin, you should not trust what I have to say. Go dry fire a bunch, see what works for you, pay attention to instructors who are at a high level, who have been there and done that. Focus on what they have to say. I'm telling you what I've learned through hours and hours and hours of dry fire, but that doesn't mean I'm any kind of expert. And at the end of the day, I'm a video on the internet. Go learn. YouTube is not training. That having been said and gotten out of the way, there's a lot of different ways that people clear their cover garment for an appendix draw. I'm going to be talking about the specific way that I do it, that I think is different than the way a lot of other people do it, and it's not something I've really heard talked about by any large instructors. Maybe there's a reason for that, and maybe there's not. First off, there's a one-handed draw that Mike Seeklander teaches that's really good. Gomez has one as well, Paul Gomez, the late Gomez. He taught one that was pretty similar to Seeklander, and basically those one-handed draws have to do with moving your garment in a circular motion to get your draw. And those are valid techniques if you need one-handed. But most people tend to use a two-handed draw of some kind so that your weak hand is clearing a garment and your strong hand is establishing grip to come out. That's what I want to get into, specifically how you clear the garment on a two-handed draw. Most of the time it's the weak hand clears, the strong hand is coming out with the gun unless you've got some sort of crazy scenario you're practicing, which is even more off in the weeds than I am. The main ways that people tend to clear their cover garment is a hooked thumb. Basically they stick their thumb out, get it underneath their garment, alright? So with a weak hand, that would be something like this. I'd flag my thumb, and I would get it under my garment, and I would come up and establish my grip, and then present. That is one method that people have seen advocate. The other is sort of like a hooked finger. So basically I just use my four fingers to do what the thumb just did a second ago, and they'll tell you that you should maintain contact with your leg, come up underneath the garment, pull up while your strong hand establishes a firing grip, and then present. That's another one that you may see people talk about. And then there's a garment grab where people talk about, oh, okay, I'm in the surrender position, so I'm going to grab my chest and pull up here, access my weapon. So those are what I've seen people do, and situation dependent. One of them may work, all of them may work, whatever you need to do. The big thing is that you need to be consistent. In order to do anything at a high level, you have to consistently do it the same way a bunch of times until you're not thinking about it when you get it done. And for me, there's something that's inconsistent with all of those that I can't stand. My cover garment. Today I'm in a t-shirt. I also wear polo shirts, and I also wear button-ups. And a lot of these draws are dependent on the hemline of your shirt. Well, I'm wearing a t-shirt that's fairly snug at the moment. When I wear a polo, that polo comes down to about here. When I wear a button-up, that button-up may come lower. It may come not as low. It may have a curve because it's meant to be tucked in and I'm lazy. I may be wearing a sweatshirt that hung lower than normal and there's more material to it. So all of those cover garments can really influence the manner that I clear. And so what I do instead that I think is a little bit different is I use my weapon as an index point to get rid of my garment. So I'm carrying a Glock 34 holster with a Glock 17 in it. And I'm basically going to use this curve where the web of my hand goes to clear my garment. And it's fairly blind to what the garment actually is because it's not based on a hemline. It's similar to the chest grab, except I'm not going to smack myself in the chin. So I can just use the shelf that the weapon naturally makes to rip up and get my cover garment clear for the draw. And it's something that helps me be consistent because my belt and holster are going to keep the weapon in the same place regardless of where my hemline is. When you're doing this, if I move to a side view, I'm gripping where that shelf is, and if I'm really being explosive with it, my shirt will actually arc out and up, and that's okay. So grabs, it arcs out and up, I get my weapon and I present, and that works very well for me because it's consistent even though my clothing is not. And that really has helped me begin to get it the same every time. There is some differences or some things you should consider. That's the play and the fit of your shirt. So this shirt I can grab and I can move. A polo has more play. Some of my button-ups have less play. The fit of the shirt will still affect it some. You can get the draw done. I can clear with that draw in a very snug button-up. You will ruin a button-up if it's an incredibly snug button-up. Ask me how I know. You'll get your weapon out and into play, but if you're wearing something that has weaker stitching on your mid to lower buttons, you might rip them off. And so that can be something that happens. Also, the gun shape. I'm using a medium beaver tail, and I have this little area where the web of my hand is going to drive, and that is basically where I'm putting my hand. So I can put my hand like this on the gun, or like this on the gun, angled on the gun. It doesn't really matter, as long as I get a sweep up that results in me moving the cover garment. When you're being really explosive, if my hand starts over here, it might hit the gun in a slightly different manner, but it doesn't matter because I'm getting the full cover garment moved. Gun shape is another one. If you have something with a very, very prominent beaver tail or a sharp Trijicon HD rear sights, you might mess up your booger hooks. I have been dry firing before and moved just too explosive, and before I really started to ingrain it, I hit my thumb and I tore up my hand a little bit. So you got to be careful of that. But it's something that really works for me that I thought other people might benefit from. And it can be done at a fairly decent clip. I've been practicing with .8 draws to build up to try to get a sight picture from appendix in a t-shirt. I've also done it in a sweatshirt. I've also done it in a button-up. And with a .08, I'm not there with a sweatshirt. But I'm getting closer, and so that's just something that I think really helps me. I know there are other people that are incredibly proficient with one of the hemmed styles of garment clear. Mr. White is incredible at clearing his garment that way. But this allows me to start with my hands naturally at my sides as opposed to some sort of hunched position that you'll see a lot of people. They'll put their weight on the balls of their feet, lean forward because they're trying to get that garment to lay out so that they can get under the hem. And that's because I have two polka dot loops, I have a clip, I have thick belt loops, buttons, seams, and if I'm trying to come up under my garment, as I'm dragging my fingers, it's really easy for me to just, oh, nothing happened there, and catch on this clip, or catch on the belt, catch on whatever, and then I don't get my garment cleared consistently. And so a lot of people, to alleviate that, will hunch their shoulders forward, or will hunch themselves forward. And there's people that don't do that and are incredible with it. Like I said, Mr. White. But this is my natural stance with my hands at my sides, and this type of garment clear allows me to just bend at the elbow to get that done. Instead of, I just feel like that is a very natural movement, whereas isn't. That's obviously exaggerated, but you'll see people that try to do that type of draw, and they'll kind of catch up. And it was really hard for me to build consistency doing that. So that just works better for me with my hands at my natural sides. And with that shelf position, it really helps me to get the cover garment to clear it. Another thing that I notice, I don't know anything about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu other than some really, really basic crap that I was taught in the service. But someone that does know a lot of Cecil Burch. I don't know Cecil other than a YouTube comment back and forth on something. I've never really interacted with Cecil. However, I do know he's got 20 some odd years in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He competes and kicks ass. Other top level instructors cite him as someone to trust. And when he presents his information, he gives me the why. He doesn't just say, do this because I say do this, or do this because this other person says do this. Like me, I'm just referring to these people. That's how you can tell that he knows what's up and I don't. Because I'm telling you why I want to do it, but I'm citing all these sources, and he'll go in depth to tell you why. So I trust what he has to say, is the point. But in his video, he says that he chooses appendix because it keeps his elbows tight to his body. And keeping his elbow tight to his body gives guys that know what they're doing in a tangled mess less of an opening. So a guy that's really, keyed up and knows what they're doing with jiu-jitsu and hands-on tanglements, those people know that the space between your trunk and your elbow is an opening, and this creates less of an opening than the same movement hunched forward going. I feel like this creates a much bigger opening on both sides. My right side's not perfect. I could probably tweak my draw more, but I feel like this sweep at the elbow up puts less of an opening and then gives me the same presentation, doesn't change. I feel like it makes less of an opening. The shelf is more consistent. It doesn't matter what the cover garment actually is because the gun is the index point and it's in the same place. It's not dependent on what this is. The other thing is, if my feet are facing this way and my body is over here, the cover garment part that's actually covering my gun is no longer this, it's over here. But the draw doesn't change because the gun is the index, not the garment. So it doesn't matter if it's closed, it doesn't matter if it's open, it doesn't matter, it's unimportant. The point is, the garment is not, it takes it out of the equation for me, and I think that's handy. I'd love to know what other people think. If other people do this, if some big name, instructor guy does teach this, then I want to find out about it because I want to learn what he does. He might have nuances that I'm unaware of. I've got a lot of hours doing this, but that doesn't mean that I have it all figured out. So that's me off in the weeds about garment clearing. So thanks.